Yeah.
Jefferson, getting it all.
Yeah.
Thank God for Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're live.
We are live. Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled infrastructure meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. The members of the infrastructure committee that are present tonight are myself, Chair Dean, Councilor Fish, Councilor Fournier, Councilor Hawes, Councilor Leonard. We also have Councilor Mallor. We are joined by Amanda Smith, who is the Director of Water Development. Water quality, and Jefferson Davis, our head of
Director of Engineering.
Director of Engineering. And first up, we have an annual summary by Amanda Smith on water quality.
All right, good evening, Amanda Smith, Director of Water Quality Management. I wanted to take an opportunity to just bring you some foundational information about our department and what we do. For a couple of reasons. First, I haven't spent a large amount of time with newer counselors, and also for the public, because we're at a point in time where I think that we'll be talking a lot more over the next several years. We are heading into the last 5 years of a 15-year EPA consent decree, so it's going to get busy really fast. And I'm sure discussions will be ongoing even beyond the end of our consent decree. So it is important to have a little bit of a foundational knowledge of what we have for this department as far as infrastructure and what our challenges are, and the momentum we've been making throughout our EPA consent decree. So the Department of Water Quality is essentially the sewer collection system and the wastewater treatment plant that takes on average 3 billion gallons of sewer a year and treats that and prevents contamination into our beloved Kenduskeag and Penobscot rivers. The department consists of two divisions. One is the sewer collection system division. The other is the treatment plant. The city's sewer collection system is one of the largest and the oldest, most complex sewer systems in the state of Maine. It is staffed with 10 technicians, 2 CCTV vans where we use robots in our sewer systems with cameras, and we inspect the inside of all of our pipelines. Every one of our 10 sewer technicians is NASCO, a national standard pipeline inspection certified technician. And we've recently, a couple of years ago, council approved for us to get a third camera system that we have mounted to our side-by-side so that we can inspect lines that are not in roadways. We have about 150 miles of sewer line. Many of them are not in roads. So we try to bring sewer gravity everywhere that we can. And a lot of times that's not following the path of a road. So there's a lot of public sewer lines that go through various properties, public and private properties, through fields and woods that we're responsible for maintaining and inspecting. And that comes up on occasion. A lot of people aren't aware that not all sewer lines are under roads. In addition to the 150 miles of sewer line, it's estimated we have up to 100 more miles of private sewer lines. So another thing to be aware of is not every sewer line is publicly owned. There are many privately owned sewer lines for a variety of reasons. So we also have 2 large sewer jet flusher trucks that we use to keep our sewers clean. We just took delivery on our replacement flusher truck on Tuesday of this year. That was part of our capital plan for FY25, and it is a beast. It will probably be the most recognizable vehicle on the streets of Bangor here from this point forward. It is very big and very orange and beautiful. It will allow us to be a lot more efficient and take on a lot of work that we used to have to contract out because our other jet trucks just didn't have the capabilities that the new one does. In addition to the sewer system, we have the treatment plant. So our treatment plant is one of the largest. It's the second largest in the state of Maine. It is a biological treatment system. So a lot of times people think of wastewater treatment plants. They think, like drinking water treatment plants of just pushing a bunch of water through a filter. And it's a lot more complex than that. It is a large biological system The state of Maine grades plants by size and complexity. 1 through 5, our plant is a grade 5. You need state of Maine licensed operators to operate it. In the state of Maine, they license operators grade 1 through 5. We need at least one grade 5 operator to legally operate that plant and discharge our effluent into the Penobscot River. That is something that our department has struggled with over time. We have all licensed operators, that is a requirement, but a grade 5 is not easily attained. And I'm happy to tell you we've added one this year, so we now have 3 that are grade 5 operators. So we've been really working on a lot of succession planning, and I'll explain why. So we have a very complex treatment plant. I'll say we probably have, in my opinion, the best designed treatment plant in the state of Maine. I've been to many, many treatment plants, and we are very fortunate. Ours is well designed. I think that it's also the best maintained for its age, and I've heard that from more than one place. In fact, we just had DEP and EPA, multiple layers of DEP, and our new EPA inspector there last week. They did a deep dive into inspecting the treatment plant and also an audit of our laboratory and data, and it was a very good inspection. So this past year accomplishments, we are hyper-focused on succession planning because we've really struggled over the last 6 years. Since 2019, the sewer division had 100% turnover. So when I first came here, most of our staff had 20, 30 years. We saw a tremendous amount of retirements and other turnover. It was 100%. So we went with really long tenure to less than 3 years at this point. Our sewer crew average tenure is 2.7 years. So it's been a challenging few years, and they are at a point now where they have overcome that learning curve. They are highly skilled. Things have changed so much with the pipeline inspection and the requirements and regulatory constrictions that didn't used to be. Those are pretty technical jobs now to fill, to train, to attract people to. It's not the good old days where if you could run a shovel, you could work on the sewer crew. With their knowledge and skill and drive that they have now, they have absolutely broken records. I mentioned that about a month ago, but just to give you an idea, under our consent decree, we're required to officially inspect and document and clean 10% of our lines every year. That's 15 miles, which is a heavy lift for most communities. Most communities in Maine and elsewhere struggle to hit that 10% mark. We are required to, it's a goal for most communities. We are required to under our consent decree. But this past year, we inspected over 27 miles and cleaned over 70 versus the 15 that we were required. So you have a very, very driven crew. It has helped as we've filled in the gaps so that we are finally fully staffed. And they're knocking it out of the park. So, and then they take care of the typical other things, resident complaints, backed up sewer lines, storm response, and then also working with engineering on, we did almost $700,000 worth of just small projects. That doesn't include our large projects of sewer line replacements and repairs. So they're a busy crew of 10. At the treatment plant, we also have suffered a lot of turnover. So this past year, we lost our chief operator of 33 years and our lab manager of 56 years at that treatment plant. So that is a lot of knowledge walking out the door. We have spent a lot of time just collecting what knowledge that we can and putting it on paper and writing, standard operating procedures and anything else, and trying to keep a good relationship with them so that we are free to call them even today and ask them questions about the things we forgot to collect from them. And it's been rough. And we still have, as far as I know, a couple of retirements coming this year. So the tenure is dropping quickly at the treatment plant as well. And we're investing a lot of time in addressing that, and also training newer, greener operators and trying to incentivize them to, develop through their career and get those higher license levels. our main focus this year was on our SCADA project. The SCADA system is the sort of computer brains behind the entire treatment plant, all of our regulator structures out in the collection system, all of our pump stations. It was in existence since the mid-nineties. We just upgraded it. It was probably the most technical and the most stressful project that that department has ever done. We had our chief operator retire just before we were switching over to the new system. So our new chief operator, who's been with Bangor for 3 years, has done a tremendous job, but that was a very rough project to go through. And stressful, but it's also changed the way we operate literally every single component in that plant. So now, on top of having, some new employees to train in general, we are training all employees, even the long-term employees that we have, on how to do everything a completely different way than they've ever been used to. It is helping us with compliance. It's helping us fine-tune wet weather control. And on top of that, we also have the Davis Brook tank, which has changed entirely the way that we handle wet weather. So that's a huge learning curve that you can really only tackle from one rain event to the next rain event. So that's where a lot of our focus has been. And in addition to that, so the city has 5 sewer pump stations, the largest of which is getting a facelift right now by Bangor Beautiful. And with their mural that they're doing down there. But we've also maintained 9 pump stations for the town of Hamden and 5 pump stations for the town of Herman since the 90s and on some expired agreements. So a lot of staff in the time in this past year has been trying to help Herman and Hamden learn how to maintain their own pump stations, learn what to do during emergency response. Back in the 90s when our stuff was new and their stuff was new, it was probably a good idea to do the neighborly thing and just use our trained operators to help those towns out. And they there was reimbursement for that, but we got to a point with aging infrastructure where we started having to decide in the middle of the night during wet weather, whose alarm to respond to first. So we've got alarms going off at our stations. They've got alarms on their stations, and it's just not sustainable. So we've been spending a lot of time training them on how to do their own and working hand in hand with their employees to do that, which has been going well, but also, it takes twice as long to do anything when you're also training someone else. Which brings us to our storm response. So our combined sewer overflows, and I think that it's important for the public to understand what a combined sewer overflow is. We call them CSOs. The city's sewer system was originally designed to transport all of the sewage to the treatment plant, but also all of the stormwater. So all of the catch basins, all of the drains during a storm also were going into the sewer line, and the city's been working on separating that out since the early 90s. We are about 70% separated. The 30% remaining is the most challenging to separate out. It's in areas of Bangor that are difficult for one reason or another. For example, downtown Bangor was designed that way. Roof drains all go into the sewer. There's a lot of infrastructure with very little room to add another conveyance system like separated stormwater. So that's a challenge that we've been working on. To account for not being able to separate in some areas, the city's installed sewer storage tanks. We had 3 tanks that were about 3.8 million gallons total up until a few years ago when we brought the new Davis Brook tank online. That is a huge 3.8 million gallon tank, so that doubled our storage. Doubled our storage hasn't resolved all of our CSOs. We didn't think that it would, but it has significantly reduced volume of CSOs. It has also reduced the occurrence of what we call SSOs, the sanitary sewer overflows, which are overflows that happen anywhere where the system's overwhelmed during a storm and you might just have a manhole pop anywhere in the city and sewer starts coming out of that. Those have been significantly reduced since we brought the new tank online. So the city has 9 licensed combined sewer overflow outfalls. And what those are points, they're relief points throughout the city along the Kenduskeag River and along the Penobscot River, where when the sewer system is overwhelmed during a storm and the treatment plant is taking the maximum flow that it can, which is 43 million gallons in a day, anything above and beyond that cannot go through that treatment plant. And it needs to go somewhere. It's all in the sewer system. And there are 9 relief points in the system that will go out untreated. And they're really important because they are protecting people's basements from flooding, roadways from flooding, and major infrastructure from being damaged, both public and private. So it's not ideal, but that's what we're licensed to do in order to protect all of that infrastructure. And the city has been working on eliminating those since the early 90s. We have eliminated over 85% of our combined sewer overflows at a cost of $94 million since the early 90s. We are under a consent decree right now, which I mentioned earlier. We're in the last 5 years of a 15-year consent decree to get those CSO events down to 4 per year or less. Last year, we were at 21. So we still have a long way to go. The Davis Brook tank, like I mentioned, helped reduce volume. It didn't necessarily reduce the number of events because there are areas of the city, those other 8 CSO outfalls that it doesn't have impact on. Some of them will not be impacted at all by Davis Brook tank. So we have an entire long-term control plan that we are working our way through project by project to get down to those 4 events or less per year. But there is a long way to go. One of the challenges is we signed that EPA consent decree in 2015, and there is still a noticeable difference in the types of storms that we are seeing. Even since we had made that plan in 2015. So we're seeing a lot more really quick, heavy intensity storms in the summer. And the other thing that we've seen that has really increased, we've had some of our biggest overflow days on days in the winter where the ground is frozen, but then we get these major rain events. So we had one in December where the ground was frozen, and that was the case. And there were 21 million gallons that could not get into the treatment plant and had nowhere else to go. We've always had rain events in the winter, but what we've been seeing in recent years is we're getting a lot of heavy rain events in the winter while the ground is frozen, but there's no snowpack on the ground to absorb that water. So it's like it's just hitting pavement, and every bit of it goes into the sewer system. Where in the summer, the ground will absorb a lot of it. So we are struggling with the changes in the storm patterns that we've seen, especially in the last 10 years. So in summary, I wanted to leave you or give you that foundation so you understand what we do. I know you've got your tensions pulled in every direction, and it's really easy to just, not really think about sewer or what's happening when it's raining, or some of that infrastructure that's just pumping away out of sight, out of mind. So I'm bringing that back to your attention. And, we're also facing a lot of challenges that they're new to the industry, like the emerging contaminants, like the PFAS, like the sudden limited ability to dispose of biosolids now only going to landfill. A lot of state legislation that is just rolling through at a lightning pace and trying to keep up with that. So, do you have any questions in general? Sure.
So, on the last point that you brought on regarding water not sinking into the ground during these winter months, and I'm sure you've already thought about this. In the Southwest, they have similar issues during monsoon season where they get a huge amount of water and it's just not able to be absorbed into the ground. So they have, a lot of land to work with, obviously, but they do have but I can't remember the term of flows for that excess water to go out. We know these storms are going to get worse, and we know they're going to get much more, they become more common. Yeah, I'm not asking for your advice or your plans for what to do right now, but we are gonna have to come up with some sort of strategy of how to deal with frozen ground where water's not being absorbed there, because we see it all the time. I mean, the downtown gets flooded so often now. I see it every day, like every winter now, and I don't know what the solution is to that. And but I mean, thank you for bringing that up. That does make a lot of sense. And actually getting to SOPs of what you brought on earlier. I'm sorry, remind me of the gentleman in the lab.
So Tom Hambrough.
Yeah,
Mhm.
56 years.
Yes.
Gee. So because of our changing climate, because of our changing infrastructure, we're just always adapting to it. And because a lot of places in the state really look to us for leadership in regards to our wastewater treatment plant, I think we really owe it to not just our employees, but also to the citizens, the local community, to make sure that those SOPs are just constantly updated, just so that we don't lose half a century worth of knowledge as it vacates. And I know you already know all this, but is there a way that we can help facilitate those SOPs? Like, do we need to potentially give another position in wastewater treatment plant to really develop these SOPs? Because again, it is a very complicated treatment center, and I don't want us to be in a position where we were recently, where we just lost a lot of institutional knowledge. And I mean, kudos to you for being able to train a lot of these new guys on these systems. But the climate's only going to get worse as the years go on, and we need to make sure that this institutional knowledge is not lost as we deal with the future problems as well. What can we do to help you guys out?
Well, one thing you already have done is invest in that asset management software. So that's gonna help us tremendously to be able to get our SOPs scanned in, have them with that program. Our operators are gonna have them on tablets, and we'll be able to take manufacturer operating manuals as well and scan them right in. So when they're standing in front of a piece of equipment, they can just click on their tablet, they can pull up the SOP for whatever procedure they're doing, and they'll be able to pull up the operating manual for that piece of equipment. So that alone was an investment from council that's gonna go a long way to helping me do that. As far as staffing levels, that's something that we're analyzing this year. I'm in communication with many other utility managers throughout the state, and we are in the process of comparing all of that, what our staffing levels are compared to the size and complexity of our system. So it would be premature for me to answer that. But I will say it is becoming a lot more administrative heavy to be in this industry because compliance and regulation is changing.
And just one follow-up, that Excel spreadsheet that I always love to see from you. Due to recent events in the federal government, is that going to impact us in the future for replacing much needed equipment?
So I've reached out to Brandy Pierce at the DEP and asked that very question. Our concern was whether or not there would be a disruption in the federal match for the state revolving fund loans, which we rely on really heavily for projects generally over $1 million. And at this time, it looks like there's not going to be an impact to that. So I think that it will be business as usual, as far as I can tell right now.
That's great to hear.
Right.
Does anyone have any other comments?
I just want to say kudos to you and other people that are managing the plant, and a new operator that took over after someone left after 56 years, and dealing with all the things, you know, that you have on your plate with PFAS and your vision to be able to see the need and be able to teach other towns or help other towns be more independent. I think that says a lot for your skill and talent. and to be able to hire the talent we have there and to have the plant that, you know, we have. I just don't know if we express enough how fortunate we are and what a great job you guys are doing. And I just wanted to say, it's very impressive when you can do 27 miles when you only had to do 10, and you're always overachieving, and come to us and tell us you needed the software and now you have it. And I'm impressed, and thank you very much for your work.
Well, thank you. And I will pass that along to the actual truly talented
Thank you.
people that are doing this work. Thank you. All right, we'll move along to interlocal agreements. So this is another topic that will probably I'll be bringing back to you multiple times throughout the year as we negotiate these interlocal agreements. So the towns of Hampden and Herman don't own their own wastewater treatment plant. So historically, Bangor has taken their wastewater, both commercial, industrial, and residential here. The agreement that we're currently operating under is 1996. It expires the beginning of next year. We've been talking with both towns for years leading up to this. This is a big deal. That is a big long-term agreement. As we just talked about, almost nothing is the same in this industry as it was when those agreements were written. I want you to understand what these agreements are, you know, the basic structure of them. When the city upgraded the treatment plant, we built this, what's called secondary treatment complex, back in 1993. And in 1996, both towns were offered options to buy capacity. So Hampden ultimately bought 8.33% capacity. So they essentially own that percent of our treatment plant. And Herman is a much smaller percent. It's less than 1%, actually less than a fraction of a percent. But both towns own a piece of our treatment plant. Both towns are also looking for additional capacity, which we are about to embark on a capacity study to see what we do have available and what we need to reserve, both for Bangor's development and, you know, we always reserve a safety factor of capacity. So for the most part, these interlocal agreements have worked well. There are certainly things that we need to update, and there are going to be some growing pains for both of those towns because we've learned to adapt with new regulation and costs and keeping up with capital. And they're going to have to start learning to adapt to new regulation and costs as well. But opening this interlocal agreement, renegotiating it has given us a chance to work very closely together. I mentioned we've spent a lot of time with them, both at an operator level, all the way up to a lot of conversations with the town managers and the supervisors of public works. A few things that I just wanted to make you aware of. The town of Herman is at a point where they have exceeded their purchase capacity, especially during wet weather. So the town of Hampden delivers its wastewater right to our treatment plant. They don't use any of our infrastructure except for our treatment plant. And the way that works is we look at the total flow and they pay their proportional amount of the flow that's coming from them. They also pay their 8.33% to capital improvements at the treatment plant. They bill their own sewer customers. They have their own sewer rates. They are not the same as Bangor, so they have a revenue source for capital to maintain their sewers and pump stations. The town of Herman, the agreement with Herman was very different, where we ended up billing Herman's customers as our own. Herman enters our collection system in two different points out in the city. It utilizes about 6 miles of our sewer line and 2 pump stations, one being the Perryville pump station, which is over capacity and restricts development. Also, because Herman doesn't have a revenue source to maintain their collection system, even though they're not a combined collection system, they are strictly a sanitary, there's a lot of inflow and infiltration. So the flow that comes to Bangor from Herman during a rain event is about double what we're actually billing to their customers. There is no one is covering the costs of that extra flow that comes through those pump stations and is treated through our treatment plant. So we are looking with this new interlocal agreement to align the Herman agreement like Hamden's, where they will take over the billing of their own customers. They will set their own rates. They will have a revenue source to maintain their collection system. In the meantime, because of the Perry Road pump station being over capacity and Herman being over the capacity that they have purchased at the plant, we've discussed, we're not able to issue them sewer capacity statements for their development at this point. So what we discussed is as they do projects that remove that extraneous flow and have that engineered and evaluated, as they remove extraneous flow gallon for gallon, we can free up capacity for them to approve continued development in Herman. And so a lot of that structure will be in the new agreement for both towns so that we can address when either a town is over the capacity that they purchased or sending a large amount of extraneous flow or both. There are a few infrastructure upgrades they're both aware of. We've discussed at length that they will need to do to ensure that we are able to meter their flow appropriately and have regular communication. There are some challenges right now with the infrastructure that they have and the radio communication that comes to our treatment plant. And we want to build in just some checkpoints throughout this 30 years. 30 years is a long time, and our current interlocal agreement didn't really give us an opportunity to have checkpoints and to easily reopen an agreement if there were some major regulatory changes or other changes that needed to be addressed. We did hire an attorney to help us work through this and advise us. To this point, we've largely just done it based on our relationship and communication. We haven't really had to engage the attorney a lot. We have a follow-up with him shortly, so I'm gonna follow up with him. We're trying to get a draft ready that we can start working off of paper rather than meetings and action items. Another point that I just want to make sure you're aware of is the federal government has delegated its authority to the city, or to DEP, who delegated its authority to the city to be the control authority for the industrial pretreatment program for Bangor, Hamden, and Herman. And what that means is all industries that have a significant wet flow that could potentially impact their treatment plant, or all industries that fall under certain categories according to the Clean Water Act have to be permitted, inspected, and sampled, and we are the control authority for their compliance. So that's something as well that needs to be updated and renegotiated with both of those towns because we act on their behalf that way. And so I will keep you updated as we move through this process. I just wanted to lay that foundation for you.
Yes. Counselor Warner has a question?
Any pushback?
No,
No.
no, I think we've really had I mean, there are some things they're aware there are gonna be growing pains. So we've talked that through, but we really haven't gotten any pushback. And I think for the most part, both towns have gotten a pretty good deal. I think that they know that they've been on the good deal end of things now for many, many years. So I think that we started talking to them early enough that this is not unexpected. We've been laying this groundwork for at least 5 years.
Just follows it. So we would be entering into another 30-year agreement? Is that typical or?
Apparently. So that was my first question to our legal representation is, does it have to be 30 years? But it is because it's because we're talking about the fact that neither town owns a wastewater treatment plant. And if we were to have to come to the table every 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, if something were to, swing too far one way or another, you could put, and there are a couple of towns going through this right now in the state of Maine. you could be looking at that town needing to make $100 million investment to find a way to treat their own wastewater. So because of the complexity, because of the potential for the dollar amount of infrastructure, it is recommended that you stay with 30-year interlocals. But build in all of those checkpoints so that we can come to the table over parts and pieces if they need to be addressed, but the whole context stays in place.
To follow up on Councilor Fournier's question, so like those triggers to cause further discussion, does that also include emergency events? Like, let's say we have another PFAS crisis, for example. If a lot of those costs are going to go on to Bangor taxpayers, but potentially not Herman and Hamden taxpayers, is there a way for us to reopen those contracts?
So the way that they will be going forward is specifically, it's going to address emerging contaminants. So we're not gonna say PFAS in particular, because we might be dealing with a different one 15 years from now. But yes, to answer your question. And that also, there's a lot of language in there, depending on if we face regulatory or financial challenges. It will also depend on whether or not, you know, if the PFAS contamination, for example, creates costs for us based on PFAS that was in Bangor, those towns wouldn't be burdened with that. But if the PFAS, for example, is coming from one of those towns, then Bangor's ratepayers would not be burdened with that. And that town would be accountable for their portion.
Well, great. Any other questions on this? We're looking forward to hearing your updates.
And then,
And
last,
capacity study will be when?
we're
This is
getting ready to
ongoing?
put the RFP together now. And lastly, I just want to invite anyone who hasn't been to the treatment plant to come check it out. It's not what you think. It's actually a really good place.
It's a good tour.
It is, it's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, we have tree donation from Bangor Beautiful, Jefferson Davis.
Right, so Aaron is on vacation this week, so I'm gonna cover a couple of his agenda items, and then I have been a rooter, or forestry manager. I'm gonna have him come up to the table to answer any questions, but. Hello, Ben. Hello. So, Bangor Beautiful, has approached the city, to offer a donation of, 13 trees to be planted on public property. Bangor Beautiful is a charitable 501c tax exempt organization, and they are dedicated to making our community a more beautiful place to live through public art, trees, gardens, and other beautification efforts. They are proposing a donation of a bur oak, a black cherry, a beech plum, butternut, three butternut, 3 American plum, 4 service berries, and some watering bags to maintain those. Their proposal is to plant, there is a map that's associated with it. 12 of the trees at the intersection of Washington Street, Independence Street, and Broad Street, which is in the diagram. And 1 tree in the island on Howard Street. These trees are suitable species for the selected locations based on infrastructure and, let's see, the addition of 12 downtown trees and the eventual canopy, they will also create more shade and aesthetic beauty in the location, which is frequented by cruise ship passengers and event attendees who park at their parking garage. Bangor Beautiful will organize volunteers to plant the trees under the supervision of Ben and his crew. Once planted, the trees become city property and will be maintained by the city. The Howard Street traffic island was originally designed with this tree in place, but Public Works never planted it. That plan will finally come to fruition. I'm laughing because I did that back in 2008 with Ames. So I'm sorry.
I'm laughing at the
Way to
design.
finish it up, Jefferson.
What's that?
Way to finish it up.
Yeah. So Bangor Public Works
We really have to
recognized,
plow around it now.
yes. They recognize that some of the areas of the city have seen a net loss of trees due to infrastructure conflicts and lack of active management of the tree maintenance program. The first is usually associated with me. But the second, the lack of active management, Ben has done a fantastic job in Public Works to improve that program. I don't know if you've ever been to this committee, but Ben has really brought a lot of knowledge to the forestry department there. And he's a fantastic resource, so I'm very glad he's here so you can meet him. And so staff recommends the infrastructure committee accept this donation with a value of $2,849 plus labor from Bangor Beautiful. And if you have any questions, Benny's here, and then we also have Greg from Bangor Beautiful that can answer any questions that you have.
Any questions on the tree donation?
No.
Do we need a motion on?
Yes,
The
this,
donation?
yes, this will go to full
So
council.
move.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Very interesting.
Okay.
Next up, we have the overnight on-street parking trial, which you will tell us all the.
I will tell you
ins and
all
outs of
about
what
it.
we went Through this winter.
I will try to tell you all the ins and outs, but he created, luckily Aaron does a good job with his memo, so I'm just gonna read off that, but so this is the overnight on-street parking trial for the winter 2024 and 2025. The city of Bangor ordinance 291-42, winter parking currently prohibits overnight parking on city streets and specifies an odd even parking scheme during the day from the time of the first parking ban of the season until March 31st of each year. Bangor developers have stated that the lack of space for off-street parking has been a barrier to create housing. And, you know, additionally, the creation of free parking everywhere, you know, incentivizes and subsidizes driving and, you know, it I'm so sorry. Yes, let me have a drink here. I'm just gonna have a drink and skip that word, how's that? Taking other forms of transportation like walking, biking, or transit. You know, and lastly, on-street parking also helps naturally slow traffic, which would be helpful on some of our roads with speed and issues like Center and Third, Webster, 14th. So the winter 24-25 parking trial, Public Works and Community and Economic Development work together to outline potential changes to the ordinance 291-42 and propose an on-street parking trial for the winter. This trial consisted of the following. On-street parking was allowed during overnight hours all winter, the same as during the rest of the year. Eliminating the overnight parking ban outside of the downtown parking district. On-street parking during the day followed the same rules as the rest of the year, eliminating the odd even parking rules. When a citywide parking ban, the snow clearing order was announced, all residents were required to find off-street parking. When a downtown parking district parking ban was announced, only vehicles in the downtown parking district were required to find off-street parking. Let's see. So when a citywide parking ban was announced, the following park lots became available for off-street parking from 5 p.m. through 7 a.m. Cameron Stadium, Columbia Street Parking Deck, lower deck only, Cross Insurance Center, Lot C only, Essex Street Dog Park, Gateway Park, Hayford Park, Pickering Square Parking Garage, the back section of the lower deck only, Union Street Recreation Center, Upper Abbott Parking Lot, the back section. And then new signage was placed at the entrance to each of these lots to indicate that they were available for parking during parking bans. The winter parking on-street trial was announced through communication channels listed below. So they listed City of Bangor Mass Alert Notification System, the alert banner on the city website, the alert notification on the Public Works webpage, all of the social media channels. They also went to the media, WAVI, LBZ, WVII, and then we set out, or Public Works set out electronic message boards placed at State Harlow and Harlow and Central Street. So here are the results. The overnight on-street parking ban was a little confusing to residents at first. Unfortunately, Bangor PD ticketed and towed many vehicles in the beginning. And of course, the residents conveyed that to Public Works, that they were of course unaware of the overnight parking ban. Public Works and the city experienced several storms early in the season that were under forecasted. This required Public Works to plow around a large number of parked vehicles, leaving snow piled in the road. But overall, the negative feedback from residents regarding the trial was minimal. Public Works also received feedback from residents that allowing overnight on-street parking during periods of no snowfall was helpful and appreciated. So overall, we believe allowing overnight parking during the winter was a benefit to residents. So staff is recommending that the infrastructure approve Public Works and the city solicitor to draft a change to the winter parking ordinance. And the draft change will then be presented to the infrastructure committee for consideration. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer, but I wasn't really involved with this, but I can certainly note. And you know, when Aaron comes back, I can sit with him and go over any concerns you guys have.
Do you happen to know how well utilized the parking lots were when the residents were required to move us?
I don't, and I don't
I think that
know,
would be interesting to know.
Yeah.
People don't like to move their vehicles.
no, they don't, and I don't know if that was, you know, checked during overnight hours or not. But I can certainly talk with Aaron on that.
Anyone have any questions regarding the parking?
Debbie, I thought she was coming over here to answer that, but maybe. The parking lot utilization. I'm sorry, I don't have these answers.
That's okay. That's all right.
But
Do we-
I would make a motion to go forward with staff recommendation to have the city solicitor and Public Works redraft this
Okay.
ordinance.
Second. Very good. We'll try it again.
Right. All right, thank you.
And last up, the MDOT Win 27746.00 VPI Village Partnership Initiative Resolution.
All right. So, I think we all know what the VPI is by now. But city staff in conjunction with the main DOT and the, Bangor Area Comprehensive Transportation System BACS, hired consultants, Sewell and Viewshed, to create a report for, downtown Bangor transportation streetscape improvements. We presented those on the 19th of February. The final report describes the extents of the study process, existing conditions, and also recommended improvements and preliminary cost estimates. To move forward to the next step of the grant process, the city council will need to vote on a resolution that the city of Bangor formally accepts the report and that the city requests Maine DOT to continue to work with us to provide all available funding sources or pursue them. The resolution also states that the city of Bangor understands that implementation will involve a future commitment of local city of Bangor funding, which is anticipated to be at least 10% of the project cost. And that project cost includes all design, inspection, and construction itself. At our previous meeting, the committee requested that the engineering department separate the improvements into phases and present those with this draft resolution. So I did break it out into phasing with associated cost, and I also created a link that has those phases in it. I hope the link worked. I had multiple people check this link before it went out, so I hope you're all able to look at it. And all it was just, pieces of the original VPI that I of course, provided to you, but I separated into phase 1 through phase 6, and then had the park projects. So, I'll just go over those phases.
Like what it's supposed to be.
Yes, and you can click on those PDFs. So phase 1, Main Street corridor. So it's intersection of State and Hammond to Railroad Street. And the preliminary cost from the consultant was 11 million, a little over $11 million. So our local share would be, just over $1 million. You want me to go more in depth into the phases or just kind of like?
We all comfortable with it?
Thank you. Phase 2, Central Street, Franklin and Hammond Street. Central Street is from Harlow to State and Hammond. Franklin Street would be to Harlow to Hammond. Hammond Street would be North High to State. Those preliminary costs would be $10.5 million. Local share, of course. a little over $1 million for the city. Phase 3, which would be Harlow Street, intersection of State to Franklin. The preliminary cost, roughly $6.5 million. Local share 10%, of course, $642,000. Sorry. Oh, I thought you had a question, sorry. Phase 4, State Park and Center Street, State Street, from Hammond to Exchange, Park Street and the south end of Center. Preliminary cost, $4 million, just over $4 million, local share, just over 400,000. Phase 5 would be Union Street, High Street, Water Street, and Broad and Washington. Union Street would be from Main to High Street. Water Street would be from Main to Broad. And also the intersection of Broad and Washington is included in that. Preliminary costs are just over $3.5 million, local share $359,000. Little phase 6 would be York and Exchange. York Street would go from Exchange to Hancock. Exchange Street would be State to York, and the preliminary cost just about $900,000. So local share would be around $90,000. And then I added that park projects, which is Broad Street and Merchants Plaza, in the waterfront park, Condescate Plaza West, just behind the park garage. You know, those could be incorporated anytime. So I didn't really put it with the individual phases, but those park projects would cost around just over $5 million, and local share would be $518,000. Any questions on the phasing of that? Yeah.
Do we have timeframes in mind for each phase?
I don't have time frames because it's depending on grant funding,
Yeah.
so.
That was gonna be my second question, how the grant funding is looking, any risk of it being retracted?
So DOT is, you know, saying things similar to what EPA is saying. Right now, infrastructure projects are gonna go full steam ahead. They don't see any issues with that. I think, you know, there was some concern at first, but it seems to cool down, so that's what we hope. You know, that's the best I can answer, I think, at this time frame. You know, phase 1, you know, this report, you know, is a large scale plan, of course. And I don't know, you know, what's gonna be available for funding. Do I think it's gonna be all of it? No, of course not, but, you know, I do hope we can get funding for at least phase 1 to start with. That's our most important quarter right now because of the sewer infrastructure that we need to replace. And again, this helps offset that cost. Doesn't pay for the sewer, but of course it helps, you know, we can rebuild the road with it. We can put all new curbing in, all new storm drain, all the new lighting and all that stuff that we move forward with. So that would be what I would focus on first. And then the rest we can use as grant funding is available and city funding is available. But
Councilor Paz, did you have a question as well?
No, it was basically on the timeframes and the grants he answered. It is the best opportunity to get to the infrastructure underneath that needs desperately, I'm
Yes.
sure, to be fixed all around town, so it will leave a much better looking space once it's done.
So I am asking for approval for the resolution, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't have the council order in here, but I will put that in the folder tomorrow.
Yes.
So the question's gone, and it goes back to wastewater. And there's all the, when it rains downtown.
Yep.
All goes into the sewer system. So is this gonna separate that? Is that gonna?
Yeah, some of that is already separated, and as we
Right.
do projects, you know, Union Street is not separated, but Water Street is separated. So as engineering and water quality, when we work on these projects and design them, we're already thinking about that, so we put the infrastructure in. So Water Street, you know, has that. You know, I put in a large enough pipe to grab Union Street when we do this sort of project, and and take it to the river, so it doesn't go away. So yes, long answer, but, yes, we will certainly think of that.
So if this does go through, how much of a percentage would that bring that down to?
Well, I don't know the percentage number, downtown, as Amanda noted, a lot of those older buildings, all the roof drains go right to the sewer.
Right.
So if we move forward with this, the first step that we will do is do a study of all the downtown buildings and see where all those roof drains go. And then we would work to get those out, of course, but,
So it's built into the project.
it would be built into the project.
Great. Super. Thank you.
We entertain a motion for the project phasing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. That's all we had.
Thanks. Wonderful. I believe we are adjourned.
I believe so.
Thank you very much.